Congress allows this meat cleaver approach to take place.
A meat cleaver? The president says the sequester cuts are like using a meat cleaver on the budget. If only that were true, because I say cleave away. Because if we don't, my generation, in effect, steals from you younger people. It's like we baby boomers do this. Excuse me, I need to take this phone.
What are you doing? Hey, give that back.
I'm old. I need this. Mr. Dow, I need this Dow. Stop. I need to take this scooter.
Hey, give that back.
Taking things from kids is nice for me, but the rest of you have to deal with the debt bomb. That's our show tonight.
And now, John Stossel.
I'm sure thankful to all you young people out there so that I can take things like these from you. Okay, I don't really need them. I don't want to steal from young people. But that's exactly what my government has arranged for me to do. I'm 65. I'm now entitled to Medicare and Social Security, a giant wealth transfer operation that takes from the young and gives to the old, even the affluent old. And it's unsustainable. There's nowhere near enough money to pay for the promises politicians made. We're already $16 trillion in debt. So, most politicians' response? Spend more. Don't cut anything. My president calls the sequester a meat cleaver approach. A meat cleaver? We should take a meat cleaver to the budget. But the sequester cut is not a real cut. It's not a meat cleaver. It's just a cut in the amount they wanted to increase spending. They wanted to add this much. Instead, they're just going to add this much. And they're still adding. They're spending more. Don't believe me? Look at this chart. The red line is what they plan to spend over the next 10 years. The blue line is what they will spend after the sequester cuts. Spending still increases, just a little less. Now, you could say I'm being unfair here because it's reasonable for government to grow to account for inflation. That's a fair criticism. So let's adjust it for inflation. I'll assume 2% a year. Spending still will increase even with the sequester. American politicians increase spending outlays by more than inflation every year. They're out of control. The rare politician who understands that? Senator Rand Paul. Congressman, you voted against the sequester because you didn't think it cut enough?
Yeah, now everybody's squawking. It's really just a slowdown in the rate of increase in government. And when you look at that chart you put up, you can't even really see a space between the lines. So it's the least we can do to get started. And we've got people even on the Republican side saying, oh, well, let's do the cuts over 10 years instead of over 1 year. They're going to replace the sequester with 10 years worth of cuts instead of 1 year. And that's such a cop-out. And if we can't do this little bit, which is in the right direction, how are we ever going to balance the budget?
On the other hand, if the sequester passes, there will be real cuts to discretionary spending. Here's a graph of that. But discretionary, including military, that's only a third of the budget. It's still not that big a cut.
The other interesting thing, John, is that the cuts in discretionary spending, if you look at them by themselves, it's really only in the first year or so, and then they rise, too.
To quote you, only in Washington could an increase in $7 trillion over 10 years be called a cut.
Well, and I've come up with a proposal that I call sequestration without layoffs. And what we propose is, why don't we not rehire anybody who retires? That's about 100,000 federal workers a year, saves $6 billion. Why don't we pay federal workers the same as we pay private workers? That'd be about 16% less than we pay them now. That saves $32 billion. Why don't we cut their travel budget by 25%? That saves another $2 billion. And then if we do competitive wages and competitive bidding for contractors, that's another $19 billion. You can cut out the entire sequester without losing a single job. Although I do think probably government does need to be smaller. You could actually do it without cutting any jobs if you wanted to.
And you've gone beyond that. You've proposed a budget that would eliminate 4 cabinet departments. Commerce, that would save $9 billion. Education, $70 billion. Energy, $27 billion, though some of that's for nuclear bomb maintenance and could go to the Defense Department. Housing and development, $41 billion. I think many Americans hear that and they say, how will we have commerce or education or housing?
My argument would be that we spend about $100 billion a year on education. It's not any better. We have tripled the amount of per pupil spending, and we've cut classrooms in half, and scores are flat. We haven't gotten any better. So I'm a big believer in school choice.
How will we have commerce without a commerce department?
Well, the great thing about trade is people trade to try to benefit their self-interest, and we've had it since probably man first existed. So I don't think we need government. What happens with the Commerce Department is they subsidize the travel of certain CEOs that are friends of government. So if you're a friend of, Barack Obama, you get to travel around. They'll help you with sweetheart deals like Solyndra or $1.8 billion for the Kennedy family for BrightSource. But really, you don't need that favoritism, and it's really what's wrong with government is sort of corporate welfare.
How will we have housing without a Department of Housing and Urban Development?
I think the government's actually torn down more houses than they've ever built, and many of the public housings go into disrepair and disuse. There are great programs out there for helping the poor. Habitat for Humanity is one that I support, and they build houses, they build ownership, the people put sweat equity as well as capital equity into them, and I think there are ways to help people, but throwing government housing at them and then letting them get overrun by drugs and other problems isn't the way to do it.
And how would we have energy without an energy department?
Yeah, I think basically the marketplace will determine the cheapest form of energy. And right now, so you have the government, President Obama, distorting that marketplace and giving money to people who are big contributors who build solar panel companies. And really, all of these companies seem to be going bankrupt. So really what you need is a marketplace to direct it. And then those who can produce energy the cheapest, consumers will buy those energy forms, and those energy companies will succeed.
All right, the current Congress is not entertaining your cuts of 4 departments, but this is the Stossel show, so I'll go further. Why are you so careful? Why not get rid of the Labor Department and the Agriculture Department?
Well, I'm such a moderate, John, and so I'm just starting with, about 30% of government, and we'll go from there. But here's the thing is imagine the Fuhrer if they were seriously discussing my 5-year balanced budget. Right now, we're talking about a cut in the rate of increase that never balances the budget. We're becoming poorer each year as we dig the hole deeper and deeper.
But let me quibble with you about your balance the budget idea, in that, A, when Republicans say that, I automatically start to go to sleep. But B, my understanding is we don't need to get all the way balanced. If we simply slowed the growth of government to 1 or 2% a year, we could grow our way out of the debt problem.
But it is true that growth is a big part of this. In fact, when you look and people say there's not enough tax revenue, the reason there's not enough tax revenue is because we've been in a terrible recession. So it is about the economic engine of growth, but you have to have policies that cause growth.
But do you agree that the balancing the budget's a goal, but you don't have to get all the way there? If we just slowed the growth, that would allow us to get out of trouble?
Well, that's how you get into a more manageable debt. I still think you should balance your annual debt. I'm not up here saying, we have to immediately eliminate $16 trillion in debt. That's going to be very difficult. But balancing your annual budget is a good and wise admonition, and so I do favor getting to that. There's another plan and another way of looking at it. I propose the penny plan also, which cuts government by 1% a year for 6 years, and the budget actually balances. But it just puts it into perspective that it's not that difficult to balance your budget, but it'd have to be a real 1% cut. And I think most American families have had to live with that. I see no reason why government shouldn't.
Just 1%. Good luck with that. Thank you, Senator Rand Paul.
Thanks, Sean.
Cutting government spending is not just about giving us a budget that's sustainable. It's also a moral issue, says Yaron Brook of the Ayn Rand Institute. What do you mean?
Well, every dollar spent is a dollar taken from somebody, whether it's through taxes or whether it's through debt, which is taking from somebody in the future, or whether it's through printing money, which creates inflation, which is another form of taxes because it raises the cost of living. We talk about spending, but we have to remember the money comes from somebody. It's confiscated for them. We are involved today in the largest redistribution of wealth in human history, from young people who typically are poor to older people who, even if they're not prosperous, kind of should be, because they should have saved. They've had a whole lifetime of saving.
But that was the contract. Social Security, FDR said we've got to take care of the old people.
It was. It's a bad contract, and the bill is due, and it's unsustainable, and it's wrong. It's immoral. It's immoral. It's immoral to take from the young and poor and give to the supposedly rich and old.
They say, hey, I contributed to Medicare all my life. FICA payments were taken out. They don't know they're getting back that we are getting back 2 to 3 times what we paid in.
Who does Social Security reward? It rewards the people who wouldn't have saved. It rewards irresponsible people. If you're taking the population without Social Security, some people save, the responsible ones, some people don't. If you saved, you would get a much better retirement than under Social Security. So we're penalizing responsibility and rewarding irresponsibility. Now, that's immoral by almost any ethical system.
And hence your book, Free Market Revolution, which argues that you just dump all these people who are on Social Security or Medicare?
You phase Social Security and Medicare out, both for economic reasons, but more importantly for moral reasons. You don't dump them. You've made the contract. It's an agreement within a generation or two. Both those systems can go away. And then what do you do? Well, people then save. You know, there's a premium on saving for retirement. And the people who really can't, there's a small percentage of the population who really can't save, who really can't afford it, they depend on charity. They depend on money from other people, which they do today as well. Just it's voluntary under charity. Today it's being forced on the young generation to support their parents and grandparents.
And voluntary is more moral than force.
Absolutely.
And government is force.
Coercion is evil. Force is evil. Voluntary is good. And government is force.
The sequester. The liberal media is hysterical. NBC Nightly News. In California, 9,000 low-income students could lose financial aid. In Texas, millions for teachers and schools could be slashed. The sequester could cripple air travel, force firefighter layoffs, even kick preschoolers out of childcare. Even.
Now, this is panic for the sake of panic. This is an attempt to demagogue us away from this tiny little cut, as you showed, a tiny little cut in the projected growth of government. And it's a stupid mechanism, right? Just to cut across the board without focusing on where the problems really lie in places like entitlements, places where growth is out of control. But they're using these kind of touchy-feely, tug-at-the-heart, children and so on.
It works.
It does, unfortunately, because our moral code is such that we believe that that's what's important. Instead of personal responsibility, people responsible for their own life, pursuing their own happiness, pursuing their own success. That's what this country is really about.
Thank you, Yaron Brook. At the beginning of the show, I pretended to steal things from kids. I do these silly things because I think it's important that young people understand that my generation is ripping them off. But do they know that? Apparently not. That's next.
The government is spending trillions of dollars, and you are going to be expected to pay the bill in the future. How do you feel about that?
I don't really think about that.
Excuse me. I need to take this stuff. For me? Okay, she's young to understand that she has to pay for my age group. But I assume older young people have some understanding. Politicians have talked about generational theft for years.
Wake up, young people.
We are stealing their future.
Literally robbing the next generation.
So I think the next generation, say college students, should know about the problem. I sent this show's special correspondent, Kennedy, to ask some about what should America do about the debt. She went to Cal State Northridge and asked questions like this.
The government is spending trillions of dollars, and you are going to be expected to pay the bill in the future. How do you feel about that?
I don't really think about that.
Doesn't it make you want to do something?
Well, not really, because I wasn't aware of this until now, so I'm kind of surprised. how can all this come down on us? That's not going to happen. It's just going to be roll over.
But what about when it does happen?
Then I guess we'll be screwed.
And these are college students.
Yeah.
They were really that clueless?
I was surprised because normally your freshman year in college, you have to take either political science or econ, and you have to learn at least some of the vocabulary terms. And they weren't dullards. They weren't idiots. And some of them seemed genuinely concerned.
And in political science, in college these days, maybe they don't touch the debt. They just talk about all the things more things government should do for people.
Yeah, they're too busy selling neo-Marxism. You're absolutely right.
But they didn't
being too optimistic.
Trillions at stake. Most students she talked to didn't know what the words meant.
Tell me what you know about the sequester.
That sounds absolutely unfamiliar to me.
What's the difference between the debt and the deficit?
The debt and the deficit? I'm not too sure.
Do you know what the deficit is? No. Do you know what the debt is?
Now, if I'm a viewer, I would think they just picked out the ones who didn't know. Most did.
No, there was only one who actually knew not only what the words meant, but the difference between debt and deficit. There was only one person who could actually explain what those two things meant.
I mean, I have to think about it sometime, but I would know.
They're both D words. They both start with DE. I understand there's a bit of confusion.
And like many people, the students engage in magical thinking about government. Some know that there is a problem.
Do you think the government spends too much money?
Yes.
But they still want free stuff.
Everyone wants free stuff from the government, don't you think?
Yeah, that's so true. But if you can get it for free, why not?
One guy even bragged about beating the system.
Beat the system. Take out a bunch of loans and don't pay them back.
So you just take a bunch of stuff for free and stick someone else in the bill.
Exactly. Well, I mean, they're taking away your taxes and everything, so might as well.
Well, everyone thinks that someone else should pay for all their stuff.
Exactly. I mean, who else? What are you going to do, work?
Yeah, John, what are you going to do, work?
I mean, this creeps me out. You spent much of the day there. Were you just disillusioned?
I was a little disheartened, but people were sweet and they were genuine, and a lot of them agreed that there is a huge problem. The disconnect was they agree that the government spends too much money. They understand they'll have to pay the bill. They still want free stuff now and forever.
And I could understand wanting free stuff. I'm astounded that people will say it on television where mom and dad can see it. It's just so stupid and selfish.
Well, Miguel, that last guy, I mean, I was blown away when he's like, what are you supposed to do, work? Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do, Miguel. And the people who put themselves through school, who didn't qualify for the loans, they were the only ones who understood that someone's not going to take care of you. You will have to work hard. You're going to have to get a job if you don't have one already. And there were some bright spots.
And let's see those now. A few responsible people.
I think that one of our biggest problems is people that expect things. They feel like they're qualified to receive instead of working hard.
So if the government runs out of money and can't support you when you reach retirement, you're not worried because
I'm going to work for my own money.
Hi to the five, sister.
So I'm glad there was some good news. Kennedy, stay with us. Later, she has a quiz for Megyn Kelly, Greg Gutfeld, and me. But next, why you should get pregnant right now. I, rudely, refuse to die. I just don't want to. And because free enterprise invented things like vaccines, MRIs, Lipitor, I probably won't die soon. On average, people who make it to my age live until we're 84. Now, I'll pay for my retirement. I've saved up. The problem is, who will pay for the millions of retired people who didn't save, who expect Social Security checks and Medicare? I know you young people will pay for them. When my generation, the baby boomers, retire, you'll still be working, earning money. You'll take care of the old. It's how it's always been done. That was FDR's assumption when he created Social Security, and it's worked up until now. But now there just aren't enough of you, and in the future there will be even fewer of you because people today have fewer kids, and that's a big problem, say Jonathan Last and Joel Kotkin. Last just wrote, "What to expect when no one's expecting. America's coming demographic disaster." Joel Kotkins, the author of The Next 100 Million, America in 2050. Joel, you say if we don't start to have kids at a reasonable rate, we're screwed.
Yeah, well,
meaning?
Fundamentally, if you don't have enough children to work for the number of retirees, it doesn't work.
What doesn't work?
Well, there's only so many people working, contributing to the pension system, and there's too many people drawing on the pension system. It's pretty simple.
And Jonathan, you say what to expect when no one's expecting. What do you mean no one's expecting?
We're not having babies the way we used to.
Well, some people are.
Some people are, but not.
Megyn Kelly's pregnant. She's coming later in the show.
You never know what she's going to do. The problem is, and what Joel's getting at is, when your fertility rate drops and it stays below the replacement level, then over time your age profile shifts, and so you get this inverted pyramid with more old people than young people. What economists call babies, they call them future taxpayers. When you don't have enough future taxpayers being born and paying into the system, then your support ratio drops.
And the replacement rate you need is 2.1.
Right.
2 parents, and then to account for some kids dying, you need 2.1 births to maintain.
Exactly. And we were at that 2.1 really up until about 2007, and then it started.
Now we're at 1.93.
Right.
And it's going down as we get richer and people get more selfish, or why does it go down?
A crappy economy, people's level of pessimism. When you trace countries with ultra-low birth rates, it basically jives with pessimism. What type of future? People don't have kids if they think the future isn't going to be.
But that may change.
Well, that's the hope.
Plus immigration. We're now talking about a new law. Bring people in.
Well, that's a positive also, I would think.
Well, I'm positive, but the problem is we become so dependent on immigration to buoy our fertility rate that we really are hostage to it continuing, and it may not, because fertility rates are dropping worldwide, including in Central and South America. Mexico is right at the replacement rate right now and falling fast.
In Singapore, the government gives cash bonuses to mothers who have more babies.
Yes.
Does it work?
Not really. It works a little bit, but doesn't work enough. We were doing interviews in Singapore and asking young women, what would it take for you to have a kid? And we got up to $1 million, we gave up. Like, she wasn't going to have a kid no matter how much, because she's saying, well, over time, that kid's going to cost me more than $1 million, so why should I go through the hassle?
Why should we believe you two doomsayers any more than Paul Ehrlich and the population bomb? There are too many babies. We're crowding everybody out, which is what I was taught in college and is total nonsense. Maybe this will self-correct.
You know, we're just raising the issue. We have a problem. It could be a very serious long-term problem. How do we address it? You have a society, you look at Japan, where you'll have by 2050 more people over 80 than under 15.
Japan is going to have this problem first.
They are having it now. I've been writing about Japanese demography for 25 years. It's exactly what we thought was happening is happening, and worse than we thought.
A prime minister said, let elderly people hurry up and die, according to the Guardian newspaper. He was talking about, look, you're not being a good person if you let the government pay for you in your old age.
They are now getting to a point now, not only were people living longer, not getting married, they're not dating. They're not the normal...
What are they doing?
Well, I mean, there are surveys now, and they ask how many young, teenage boys are they interested in sex, and it's like most of them aren't. I don't know, when I was a teenager, it was kind of a big topic. It's like they've almost evolved into some new kind of species. Now, hopefully that won't happen in America.
So knowing America, though, and you're a Democrat, but you still might find this funny, we're going to have a government program to cut the tips off condoms or put placebos in birth control pills, or...
I think they're
pass out copies of Barry White.
The best thing is have economic growth, have people feel that the world's going to get better, and they'll have children. I still believe that that's the key thing, and not to do stupid things like tell people that they can't have single-family homes because Al Gore thinks that they shouldn't.
And Mayor Bloomberg, you say, is contributing to the problem by pushing small apartments?
Well, I don't think you'll have too many families in those 300-square-foot apartments.
Well, explain the 300-square-foot apartments.
There's a lot of real estate money to be made in tiny apartments. You shove more apartments into the same structure.
You can have a family in a small apartment. People used to live in a ghetto with a lot of kids.
You know, it's funny, there's research on this going back to the 1930s. The Swedes started building after the First World War small condensed apartment buildings, and they noticed very quickly the fertility rate was dropping. This has been reproduced everywhere from Chicago to Iran to Brazil. It turns out to be entirely consistent that housing type influences fertility, even holding all the other demographic factors of the people living there constant. And so single-family homes produce more kids than townhomes. Townhomes produce more kids than small micro-apartments.
And I think that this is something that you're going to see in more and more countries as we go on, and this debate, because they're now having debates about this issue in Iran, in East Asia, in Europe, and so I think this is going to be one of the big issues in the next 20 years.
Thank you, Joel and Jonathan. So go forth and procreate. And coming up, one reason there's a debt bomb is that the government pays for stuff that's so stupid it sounds fake. Did you know that you helped pay for a cowboy poetry festival? So later, Megyn Kelly, Greg Gutfeld, and I will try to guess if stupid-sounding programs are real or fake. But next, what will wake Americans up? Make people realize a debt bomb is about to explode. Riots like these? Also, though, there's some good news. One big country diffused its debt bomb. We can learn from those places. That's next. We have a horrible debt problem, but it could be worse. We could be like Greece, where they're even deeper in debt, and they riot over just about any cut. Or we could be like Japan, as we just heard, or with not enough young people being born to pay for the future. We can also learn different things from France and Canada. Economist David Henderson grew up in Canada, which had its own debt crisis in the 90s. Economist Veronique de Rougy moved here from France. So, Veronique, France is in worse shape than we. I take comfort in that.
Well, I mean, they've been in worse shape for the longest time, so it's done the, more like deep damages than here. Their unemployment is way worse than ours, and there's absolutely no sign that they're going to be able to get out of it.
Their unemployment is in double digits. They are a richer country than Greece, so they're not in as bad shape as Greece. And, David, Canada was once in similar shape.
Yes, Canada, about to the mid-90s, was in terrible shape. Their debt as a percentage of GDP was 70%, but they brought it down to about 29% by the middle of last decade. 70 to 29%. By doing something America doesn't even propose to do with the sequester, by making actual cuts. By making actual cuts in dollar terms. And they did that over a number of years. 3 years, about. Yes. Agriculture Department cut 22 actual percent. Natural resources, almost 50%. Right. Done by a liberal government. By a liberal government. Veronique, by contrast, France isn't taking similar steps.
No, I mean, the only way they've responded to anything is by saying, I know, we have this deficit, we're going to raise taxes. There hasn't been any public austerity. There hasn't been cutting. In fact, they keep talking about how they need to grow the economy, which means basically we need to spend more money.
The government needs to spend more money. The government
needs to spend more money.
And the higher tax rate, 75% on rich people.
Yes, for income above $1.3 million.
And I like how Will Smith, the liberal actor who supports higher taxes in America, reacted when he was asked about France's new 75% rate.
75. 75. Ah ouais. Wow, yeah, that's different. Bon, là, c'est vrai que c'est pas pareil quand même. Yeah, 75. 75%. Well, you know, God bless America. Que Dieu bénisse les États-Unis.
David, I'm still not getting, since nobody here wants to cut, what moved Canada to say, we're going to spend less?
They were in bigger trouble. They were at the point we're at now, so we'll see where we go. But you did have a liberal government doing it, so it's like that old line about Nixon going to China. I think Republicans could get a lot of cuts if they were to do their Nixon goes to China by going for defense cuts, noticing that the Cold War is over, and saying, we don't need to have the Department of Offense, let's have the Department of Defense.
Well, you work for the Navy. If the sequester happens, you'll get laid off.
That's right. Well, I'll get a furlough. I'll get a one-day-a-week furlough.
You got the email today.
Yes, yes. And by the way, I'm not objecting to that. We need to have cuts. And these cuts are kind of crazy, but they're better than no cuts. And no cuts were what was on the table before.
Veronique, I'll give you the last word. You moved to America from France because you felt America was better, but now we're becoming like France.
Yeah, you're becoming like France. But, I mean, take comfort in the fact that, I mean, France is, in fact, way worse. So, for instance, I mean, you talked about the 70% marginal tax rates. Also, they have doubled their wealth tax in the last few years. They've increased all the taxes you can think about, the VAT. And as a result, and we don't see this quite yet in America, you have like Gérard Depardieu, a very famous actor, who's decided to leave. And he's made the headline, but he's just one of many, many, many.
It's harder to leave America. There's an ocean in the way. Thank you, Veronique. And David, coming up, what if I told you that our government spends millions on a mushroom council and for solar-powered bicycles? Actually, only one of those is a real government program. The other's fake. So which one? We'll have a quiz next. Real or fake?
These cuts are not smart. They are not fair. They will hurt our economy. They will add hundreds of thousands of Americans to the unemployment rolls.
Oh, my goodness. The sky will fall if we cut federal spending. That's the message President Obama sends us. And it isn't just his words that convey that. It's the background. He has cops and firefighters behind him. The picture alone sends a message. If those evil budget cutters get their way, these nice men and women will be hurt, and you will be less safe. When we face a debt bomb, this is manipulation meant to make us look away from that, away from the real problem. But it's not news, says Matt Welch from Reason Magazine. It's just what politicians do? What do you mean?
Almost 40 years ago, there was a great term coined by a liberal journalist in Washington, back when liberal journalists cared about cutting government, or at least running the government well, and that's called firemen first, which is to say when a bureaucrat is faced with not even cutting government, but cutting the growth of government, then the first thing you want to do is get a fireman in front of the camera and saying, this symbol of what you like about government will suffer first. And that way you rally public support to pay for government for all the things they don't love about government.
And that's all I'm hearing now, the terrible things. We'll have 3-hour lines at the TSA. At one point, officials at 2 Massachusetts zoos threatened to kill some animals when state budget cuts loom.
It's even worse than that. They say that more than half of the Air Force fleet of airplanes will be grounded at some point in 2013 based on this. There won't be meat inspections. The nation's meat and poultry factories will be shut down for 2 weeks. This is scaremongering. This should be properly understood as fear-mongering by people trying to scare the public and scare Republicans, therefore, about going through with cutting government.
All right, let's go to President Obama's actual meat cleavers speech.
Emergency responders, like the ones who are here today, their ability to help communities respond to and recover from disasters will be degraded. Thousands of teachers and educators will be laid off.
What's interesting about that is that teachers, educators, police and firemen, that's not the federal government, right? It's almost all state and local.
We've been hearing about teachers getting fired for, 5 years now? One of these days, they're going to close that rubber room down in the city of New York, but it's still open. That's because they never actually get fired. There's just the threats of firing your darling little child's teacher, and they never really do get fired.
And while some federal money goes to teachers and cops, most of the money won't be touched.
Right. The vast majority of funding for that stuff still, knock on wood, comes from local and state sources.
All right. Well, the federal government does have responsibilities. Obama went on to say FBI agents will be furloughed. Prosecutors will close cases and let criminals go. Airport security will seek cutbacks. It could happen.
Yes, it could happen. And if it does, the people who deserve most of the blame, no, all of the blame, are the federal managers who oversaw these agencies over the last 12 years. Why? Because we have doubled the cost of government. If you are going to ground the Air Force because we can't have any cuts after a 70% run-up in defense spending over the last decade, then that's on the Pentagon. That's not on the people who would trim it by a little for 1 year.
All right. The other distraction is they change the subject. Obama talks about the war on women that Republicans wage. The budget's the problem of the day.
Yeah, and it was a problem that really didn't get discussed in the presidential campaign, as crazy as that sounds. If you go back to the debates, the three major party debates in the presidential campaign, they didn't use the phrase debt ceiling even once. Fiscal cliff, remember that was a big deal? Not once. They only mentioned sequester once, and that was for Obama to say it wasn't his fault and it's not going to happen anyways. They made the campaign about Bain Capital, war on women, binders about women, 47%, anything but the actual economy, debt bomb, long-term entitlements, and it's a way to distract people. And this is also a time-honored Washington concept.
It's not just President Obama, of course, who does this. All presidents do it. President Bush the elder, to hype the drug war, gave a speech from the Oval Office holding a bag of cocaine.
This is crack cocaine, seized a few days ago by drug enforcement agents in a park just across the street from the White House.
Wow, right across the street from the White House. But it turned out that was crack sold in Lafayette Park only because DEA agents lured a known dealer there. The dealer didn't even know where Lafayette Park was. The DEA had to give him directions, all so he could be caught there. And this is show business.
This is what every mayor, small-town mayor, big-town mayor does, right? They want to be next to the crime bust as we got the ship full of cocaine. They want to be at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. It's really unseemly to see it, as we did in that hilarious clip, when it's the president who does it. You want to think that there's more gravitas associated with the office.
It's not just a gimmick.
That it's not just a gimmick, but that's the thing. It is a gimmick. When you spend money politically, it is going to be politicized, and politics is not pretty. It's kind of ugly. It's based on manipulating people's emotions. That's how you get things done.
And I could say, hey, it's interesting, it's fun to watch if we didn't face real problems and a debt bomb.
A huge debt bomb. I mean, it's not just that entitlements are going to be unaffordable 10 years from now, which is totally true and is being ignored. But it's also that if you have debt over 90% of GDP for any stretch of time, that puts a real active drag on your economy right now. So it's not just that you can't hire firefighters. It's that people are out of work. I mean, we have one of the worst economies in a prolonged sense in modern history right now. And part of that is because government spending is crowding out private spending, and we have this debt overhang. It's a real problem, which is more pressing than firefighters.
Thank you, Matt Welch. Reason Magazine next. When America's going broke, would our leaders really spend your money on a laundry folding robot? Had someone told me that they were spending that way, I would have assumed he made up a fake government program. But no, it's true. Your government did spend more than $1 million on this robot. When we return, a quiz about government programs. Megyn Kelly, Greg Gutfeld, and I will try to guess which are real, which are fake. This week, we were told that the sequester is a meat cleaver that's going to cut valuable government services. Apparently, there's no fat to cut. So, to test that premise, let's play a game. We'll call it Real or Fake. And I'll compete against my colleagues, Megyn Kelly and Greg Gutfeld. Welcome. Kennedy's back to test us. So here's the game. She's going to describe some real government programs, but she'll also make some up. Can we tell the difference? Whoever gets the most right wins the meat cleaver. So, Kennedy?
Without further ado, thank you very much, John. Question number one. Thank you all for playing. $88,000 to send a comedy tour to India called Make Chai Not War. Real or fake? Two of you got that one right. That was, in fact, a real program.
I'm glad we established that John does not have the inside answers right from the top. Yeah. It's good.
Maybe
that's fair.
$600,000 to study public perception of facial hair. Real or fake? Congratulations, you all got that right. Megyn and Greg, you're tied. You each have one apiece. Question number three. $140,000 to study pig feces in China. Real or fake? Greg Gutfeld, you've just taken the lead.
Damn.
Yes. I know everything there is to know about pig feces in China.
$55,000 to discover the link between immaturity and heavy drinking in your 30s. Real or fake? Congratulations, you all got that.
That could really do some good. Are you mocking that? I was one of the subjects.
It might. What are the odds?
It's an excuse for researchers to get drunk.
Greg really needs the answers to that.
Yes.
It would explain so much.
It's too late.
All right, we've got 3 questions left. $1.5 million to develop solar panel bikes. Real or fake? Greg, you are killing it. Absolutely annihilating the competition. Stossel?
Because it's impossible.
Is
Bikes
annihilating.
can't work. You can't have a solar-powered bike, because what do you do at night?
That doesn't mean that they don't study it.
That's true.
It would supplement the pedaling.
Yes.
$1 million for a wax museum in Nashville. Real or fake? Stossel, you got that one right.
Okay.
5 to the 5. Well done. That is
stupid.
fake. 100. Oh, by the way, this is our final question.
Oh, okay. This is pressure. Final Jeopardy.
Not really any pressure because there's no way Greg can lose. $100,000 for a video game about aliens saving planets from climate change. Real or fake?
Oh, come on.
Do you want to know the winner?
Yes.
Are you a despot? Like, do I have to make sure that you win?
What's the answer?
Yes. The answer is it's real.
Yay!
Greg Gutfeld, you are the winner of this gorgeous and authentic and bloodied meat cleaver.
You know what's great? There's no way I can leave the building with that. There's no way security. The moment I walk out of that studio with that meat cleaver, I'm arrested by security.
Thank you, Kennedy. Congratulations, Greg.
Thank you very much.
Megan, thank you all. And, of course, the game was silly, but it makes a point. Next time politicians say, we can't cut, every program's vital, remember, there is so much garbage in the budget, sometimes you can't even tell what's fake. That's our show. Thanks for watching. I'm John Stossel. Good night.